Welcome back. You're watching Today, and President Cyril Ramaphosa put on the charm offensive at the AGOA Forum, urging the United States to extend the trade agreement by another 10 years. 4 African nations, though, will not be benefiting from the new deal should the U.S. agree to extend it. President Joe Biden earlier in the week removed Gabon, Uganda, Niger and the Central African Republic from AGOA, accusing them of human rights violations and flouting democratic ideals. Let's get more perspective on this from Dr. Charles Sankala. He joins us in studio. He's an international relations expert. And thank you very much for joining us in studio. Your initial thoughts of Joe Biden's pronouncement about the 4 countries not abiding by human rights laws and those violations having an impact on their trade relations with the United States going forward.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me once again, and greetings to your viewers. You see, it is subjective when one mentions about human violations. You know, they are very subjective, and one needs to understand the concept on how countries has been identified as violating those human rights. You know, is it coming from countries themselves that are reporting to the United States of America that their nation is violating human rights? And what evidence do we have to support that those countries, they are ineligible, you know, to be part and parcel of the AGOA agenda?
Yeah, and it raises an important question about the sovereignty of a country and its trade relations with another country. Surely those two things are separate, because if you had to look at the situation of the BRICS nations, South Africa doesn't necessarily align with the human rights conditions or laws of a particular country, say China as an example, but that shouldn't have an impact on the economic relations and how that benefits the people at grassroots levels.
Of course, that is 2 separate angles when you have to look at that. In fact, you know, when you look at the trade between Africa, or let's say South Africa itself, and the United States of America, you can say the combined Southern Africa, you know, it is less than 1% of what USA is benefiting from the southern part of Africa, you know, in terms of exports. The new statistics, which has been published with their headlines, it's about 19.7 billion, you know, dollars of trade which has been transacted, but that is just 1% of southern part of Africa that they are benefiting of that. So who is at a position of advancing these influences? But again, we can go further and understand the eligibility, the criteria of choosing certain countries. For instance, next door here, Zimbabwe is under sanctions, and mostly they are from the United States of America. And now the United States of America comes with their AGOA agenda that they shall create employment, they shall double up the investments, they shall double up the trade, they shall bring free tax, you know, importation of African products into the United States of America. All the goodies and part of it. I would be doubtful, or I'll be surprised if South Africa would be given that 10-year extension, because America's agenda in terms of all the organization which they make, it has always been based on an American dream. And whoever who does not conform to their international policy, the military policy, the defense and security policies, their trade policies, they are viewed as violating human rights, which is also subjective and non-performance in terms of proving it. It's unfortunate that the International Criminal Court, which we thought was founded on the basis of making an equilibrium to understand those countries who are at fault and those countries which are actually dominating other countries, you know, is not functional, and this is where we are at.
Yeah, so it begs the question then, Doc, if you will, that these trade deals that are developed, whether it be AGOA or any other ones, who's at the center of developing them, and what regulatory environment should exist within these trade documents? I mean, if you were watching over the last 2 days, the President and Minister Patel saying, we would love an extension, but we want a reform of the rules. Who decides on the rules if it's supposed to be a mutually beneficial agreement?
It's of course the House, and the House is United States of America.
Yeah.
You know, they define the rules, and they define who is not compliant to those rules, and those rules they change each and every now and then. It is not like a World Cup, or let's just give reference to the Rugby World Cup, you know, which was, you know, contested by many countries, and those countries who never even had a chance to go in the semi-finals or in the finals, you know, they conceded the defeat because the rules were fair to each and every country. But with certain organizations such as AGOA, yes, AGOA is a very good platform, you know, for especially Africa to access markets from outside Africa, you know, but there's a lot of lacunas, you know, which prohibits Africa from participating freely. The question is, does United States of America have got companies in South Africa which has been given tax breaks and extended for years and years? Yes, of course. Do we have Chisanyama in the United States of America? Can you set up in a company in New York? You can't, because of the lacunas which they have protected. So it is a one-sided a type of relationship, if you call it, in terms of trade. That's why now nations are going either to the G20, they are going to the BRICS, you know, they are trying to find a mutual ground where Africa can be recognized.
Yeah,
the
and hopefully